Mullinger's Weekly Ramble.
Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Mullinger's Weekly Ramble, in which I am interviewing two of the most inspiring people in Atlantic Canadian history. And no, that is not an exaggeration. As you know, at the very root of this podcast is my love of this place. And by this place, I, of course, mean the east coast of Canada. Community wellness is at the forefront of my existence and my passions. Community support, community change, all of these things form my life and indeed this podcast. So I'm about to introduce you to two people who are really like perfect living embodiments of this. Many of you may know the story of 12 Neighbours, but if not, you're about to learn a lot more. We're about to meet, and I'm about to interview for you the incredible Marcel LeBrun and Mayor Al Smith. Now, building community is a labour of love, and that philosophy is at the very heart of 12 Neighbours. It's also at the very heart of the Dooryard Arts Festival, which is where this interview you're about to hear took place. Ross and Gloria at Dooryard are two of the many people who work tirelessly to bring Woodstock and indeed that glorious region of Carleton County a truly world-class arts festival. I've had the immense pleasure to perform at Dooryard a couple of times. I did my 2023 tour show there at the gorgeous McCain Community Theatre, which is a magnificent theatre, by the way. And then the following year, which you're about to listen to, this interview with Marcel LeBrun and Mayor Al Smith, to a sold-out audience at the Best Western Plus. That's right, and the Plus is well deserved. It's one of my favourite hotels anywhere. And if you like your Best Westerns, let me tell you, Best Western Woodstock is one of the finest. It attracted people from all across New Brunswick. People came over from Halton, Maine. So anyway, all of this is to say, and we'll say there's a big feature on Dooryard Arts Festival written by one of the actual founding members of the festival, the incredible Caitlin Dean, will be in the next issue of the Maritime Edit. Anyway, Marcel LeBrun founded 12 Neighbours, and to him, it is not just a housing project. It's a community of nearly, I think, more than 100 tiny homes that provide more than just a roof over the heads of their residents. They offer developmental support and employment opportunities to those experiencing homelessness. And when describing the pillars that the community sits on, LeBrun uses three words, and he uses them through this interview and in many conversations I've had with him: dignity, community, and opportunity. Again, three things that sum up everything that I think is special about this place. So the importance of building and sustaining community really was the focus of this very special evening during the 2024 Dooryard's Arts Festival. So I think without further ado, I will very quickly introduce you to both of them. Marcel is a technology executive and social entrepreneur and the founder of 12 Neighbours Community, which is, to kind of put it basically, it's a dignified tiny home community and social enterprise centre in Fredericton, focused on providing housing, developmental support and progressive employment for individuals who have experienced homelessness. Prior to this, many of you may know he was the co-founder and CEO of Radian 6, which was acquired by Salesforce in 2011, winning the Canadian Venture Capital Association's Deal of the Year. Unlike all of those, don't want to turn this political, but unlike all of those millionaires and billionaires in America who have chosen to use their vast wealth for evil, Marcel LeBrun is a perfect example of how someone can do good with success. The 12 Neighbours project, it's a passion project of his, and through getting involved in trying various ways of helping out in his community, he began to realise that the complexities involved in and sustainably reducing homelessness and poverty, and what it took. So it challenged his perspective on what it really means to help. And in this interview, you're going to hear how and why he's done this. Marcel LeBrun, in classic humble, he wanted someone else to be there to speak on behalf of the residents. So, of course, the man himself, Mayor Al Smith, isn't just, as I say, a community member of 12 Neighbours. He is also the kind of unofficial but also official mayor. I was actually there at 12 Neighbours Community. As many of you may know this, there's actually a beautiful coffee shop there at 12 Neighbours. For people, I mean, I went in there 2 weekends ago when I was in Fredericton doing 6 shows in 36 hours because who needs sleep, and do what you got to do. And I met with Mayor Al, and he showed me around 12 Neighbours. And this coffee shop is gorgeous, best flat white, anywhere. The beautiful baking and the food and the tons of gluten-free options, tons of healthy options, tons of not so healthy options. The airiness and the spaciousness. It's truly like the cafe. It's like you're in LA. In the middle of Fredericton, and they were in the middle of winter. It was truly gorgeous. Anyway, I highly implore you to go and check out Neighbourly Coffee. Mayor Al Smith will be there. You'll see him and chat with him. I walk in there. I literally bumped into about a dozen people I know. Bumped into Julie from Goose Lane. Bumped into Gillet from wonderful organisation that hired me for their Christmas party last year. Anyway, so Mayor Al is originally from Ottawa, and he has experienced an unfortunately high level of loss in his life. He lost his wife to cancer, lost his father the same year, and his brother. He ended up in New Brunswick to help his father and then became homeless. He and his current fiancée, Shanda, were living in a tent and homeless for 5 years. In Fredericton, and he was the third person to move into 12 Neighbours. Previously, he was housed in subsidised housing when a landlord got out of affordable housing and evicted, I kid you not, 70 people at the same time. They were one of those and never recovered. So Al went from feeling invisible to very well known, and is now, obviously, as I mentioned, the unofficial mayor of the community, and now works full-time as host at Neighbourly Coffee, which is the social enterprise, but like I say, open to public. Please go. LeBrun has actually hired a group of young students to partake in research with him. They've studied 300 organizations, and eventually weeded down to 10, where he figured out this. Basically, it took him 5 or 6 years for him to work towards this goal of impactful change. And the 12 Neighbours Community was his attempt to essentially synthesize all that he learned in each place and apply it to this community. Dignity, community, opportunity. What LeBrun has done can be replicated anywhere all over the world if only people were willing to think laterally and to be forward thinking. And actually, the 12 Neighbours it's being mirrored here where I live in St. John, New Brunswick too. So all the links and everything you need to know about the projects in St. John, which is called Sunnyside, will be on this page. So click or go to my social media pages, all at James Mullinger or James Mullinger Comedian, and all the links and the details you need are there. And if you want to donate to 12 Neighbours or Sunnyside, please do so. Anyway, without further ado, handing you over to me, Marcel, and Mayor Al. Here we go.
With your energy, how do we possibly sit down? I think we need to stand the whole time.
Do we want to do it walking around? It could get a bit exhausting. Watching me is a bit like watching Wimbledon tennis.
Okay, so you all prefer sitting? Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, they were like, please make him sit down. This is the first time any of you have ever seen me still, ever. Marcel, Al, it's a true honor to be sat here with you today. Would you like to both tell me a bit, first of all, about how the two of you first met?
How did we meet, Al?
I was homeless for 5 years, while I was homeless, I read about Marcel, that he was going to start this community up. And when I was homeless, I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we talked about it, and there's a lot of homeless people. I told her it'd be a lottery to get in there. I was actually fortunate enough to win that lottery. I was the third one in. Wow. And I met Marcel the day I moved in. Global News was there. We were right on it, right on my porch. So they hit me up right away at a really bad time where I was just coming from homelessness and just needed rest. But it was good, and that's where we met, and we've been hanging out a little bit since.
Beautiful. And Marcel, what can you tell me about Al's journey from that first day and meeting to now him being the mayor of your beautiful community?
So he's an unelected mayor.
Unelected. Hey, aren't they all in some capacity?
He's trying to change the municipal laws to hold on to power as long as he can. But he's doing a good job, and it's been fantastic getting to know Al. And now what's interesting is Al always wanted to know what the color of the next house was. So we built the house every 4 days for the last 2 years. And now we have 97 homes. We have 99 on the property. And Al was always, and you watched every house come in.
Everyone.
And for a while, actually, I was inviting one person to join me on the house move. And Al would be he'd be the one kind of entertaining them while I was helping put the house on the foundation. But it's been an amazing journey, hasn't it, Al? And really, a lot of things I learned about Al in his journey were, first of all, just, how many just sheer dumb luck things can happen to people that you have no control over. And Al has more than his fair share of those things that have happened in his life that I've learned over the last year. And also getting to know his fiancée, Shanda. I think he's announced his marriage 3 or 4 times now in the community, but we know it's going to be the first wedding in our community. But the dates keep moving. Are you willing to commit today to a date?
Shanda, not me.
It's not up to you. Okay. But Al, one of the stories that really touched me is one day. I should almost let you say it. I'll let Al share the story. But he talked about feeling invisible when he and Shanda were living in a tent in Fredericton. And then, like he said, when he first came, the media was there because he was one of the first to move in. And then he's kind of played this spokesperson role. And of course, now he's like people come to the cafe or the community and they recognize him more than me. And so, in fact, he sends me text messages now going, "I'm having coffee with Mayor Kate tomorrow. Do you want to come?" And so he's now very visible. And I think that just that power of being seen, and that's one of the things we work hard to do in the community is be a platform for people to showcase their strengths. And Al's certainly done that, and now he's working full-time as a host in our cafe, and he's bringing the charm to the cafe. He's a bit of a trickster, though, so if you come, sometimes, like if he asks you if you have a reservation, you don't need one, but he does some things like that.
Amazing. And so, Al, for you, what would you like to say to people about the community and going from that feeling of feeling invisible to not only being extremely visible, but to be such a kind of, a face for the community? What was that journey like, and what was it about the community that Marcel and his team have built that have created an environment where you felt comfortable to grow like that?
For me, it was being the third one in. That helped a lot. I think if I would have come into it in the middle of that, it may have been a little more difficult. So I got to meet people as they came in. Now it's a little harder. We have 97 homes, and we're running around quite a bit at 12 neighbors, but I do meet them. If they move in the winter, so a lot of people come from homelessness and they want to stay sheltered in their house. I may not see them in the winter, but in the spring I see them out on their porches. I'll go introduce myself. that whole journey was fine for me from where I was. That was the best place for me. I didn't know, well, I guess maybe I did know, because we started doing picnic tables when I first got to 12 Neighbours. That was, we were building them. CBC radio or news came, and they filmed. And they asked what I was going to be doing, you know, a year from now. And I said, come and see me at 12 Neighbours 2 years from now, and I'll be doing something different. And I am. So I do quite a few things at 12 Neighbours, and I try and encourage people to do that. I don't want people to stay isolated in their homes. It causes depression. Coming out and socializing is a really good thing for them. And not socializing with all their friends that they came from the streets with, but some new people. And you really want to meet new people in your life and positive people. Marcel's very positive with everybody in our community. They all know him, and he's positive. And we have, like, I think 10 community members working in our cafe right now. And we want, you know, obviously we're not going to have 99 of them unless we expand to here.
Then you will need reservations.
And then I'll become the mayor of the community here, since Marcel doesn't seem to think I'm an official mayor. But it's a good journey, and it was good for me. I did feel invisible for a while when I was homeless, and it was a struggle. It's where, for me, it was, I think if I did it on my own, it may have turned out different. I did it with Shanda, though, and when you're doing homelessness with a girl, it's very scary. And she's, you know, she takes insulin 4 times a day, and she has blister packs full of meds, and I have to watch out for her safety and making sure that she takes these meds and has that insulin, and you just, it's scary. And she kind of survived that homelessness better than I did in the end, but that was because I had all that stress, and I was making sure she was okay, and I wasn't really making sure I was okay. And that was all that mattered. And actually in my community right now, Shanda's the one that matters the most, right? It's not all about me. When people come to our cafe, they'll say, oh, I seen you online. You know, I've seen you in the paper. I've seen you on the news, and that's great. And I haven't seen them. And I'll say, well, I haven't seen you, and now I do. And it's not about me while you're here. It's about you. You came here, and that's really good. And it's not about us when they come to our community. It's about them coming and sharing something that we made for everybody.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
See why I'm the sidekick, right?
Absolutely. I mean, all of this, you know, the development that there has been for people emotionally, for people's mental well-being, like, did you can't have had that in mind when you began this project? Like, it must have, the stages to get to this place where you have a community of 900 plus people, all essentially restarting their lives or finding a whole new life. What did you envision when you began this journey, and indeed, what was it that first made you think that this would be something that was even possible to do?
That's a big question.
It is.
Yeah. You know, we're learning every day, and you know, I'm an entrepreneur by background, and you always start, you know, when you're starting a new venture, you have an idea of what you're going to create, and it usually doesn't meet the, you know, once you get it out to the customers, they say, why did you do that? Why don't you do it this way? And then you always end up changing. So it's been a journey of learning. But for me, back in 2015, I remember in Fredericton, we actually had a plan called the Road Home, Fredericton's Plan to End Chronic Homelessness in 5 years. And some community funding was raised. But the idea at the time, we had, I think, about 70 or 80 people that were on our list of chronically homeless. And we were going to build, you know, these fourplexes throughout the city. And the 5 years went by, and I think 2 houses got built, and the list went from 70 to almost 200, like 180, something like that. So we went backwards. And for me, I'm I'm very kind of, there's always someone somewhere in the world who's done something, who's figured something out. So we don't have to invent everything. So I spent about 2 years traveling, asking the question, who's doing the best job of sustainably addressing, poverty and homelessness, not just kind of meeting this flywheel of needs that goes faster and faster every year, and so you need more emergency relief, but who's doing the best job? So I went to lots of places, visited really amazing places like Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, California, largest gang rehab reentry program in the world. And there, for example, they have 9 social enterprises, and you could just see the power of work and purpose as it ties to identity. And they were putting a lot of ex-gang members to work. And I remember, meeting the founder there. He's a Jesuit priest, Father Greg Boyle, they call him G. And he said at one point, the whole point of this place, it's like a 10 million a year operation. The whole point of this place is for these guys to feel cherished at all times. That's what he said. And I'm like, that's interesting. And he says, they come in here and they think that they belong either in prison or in a coffin, and that they don't really have any value. And we confront that narrative. And so how do we confront that narrative? With how they're treated and with kindness and by including them, in things. And that was an example where, it's hard to absorb those things from the website, but the culture that they've created there and how they go about creating that culture, even though it's in a context of work, is what creates the environment for transformation. And so I just learned from a lot of these places, and it started to kind of help me shape a vision for what we would do in our community. But it was always around, I always say housing's important. We all know housing's a crisis and all that. But I say the houses are an excuse for community. And community is really the healing agent. That's really, half the time, when we have issues, it's the neighbors, that are helping each other out.
Yeah.
And so that's what our goal is, but not just building a community, a physical one, but building community in our city. So we like to say, we have a vision of a place where everyone is cherished, where barriers are challenged, and opportunities are accessible. And, we're just, and when we say everyone is cherished, we want that community, we want to help be a part of creating that community in our city and helping people interact with people they may never have interacted with before. And that's what our cafe does, is an intersection point. And you come to the cafe, you'll meet Al, you get to know him, come inside, you talk to Ashley, who's working front of house, you'll meet other community members, and that creates community for them, for everyone. That's really what we're focused on. Yeah.
Fascinating, because I think for like most people, when I first read about everything that you've done and continue to do, my first thought was, why can't this model be replicated everywhere? And of course, that's something I'm sure that we've all thought. Why can't every city? Why aren't governments doing this? Why aren't other countries doing it? But what I find so interesting, hearing what you're both saying now, is that why can't existing towns have that same community spirit that you've created in your community? Al, what do you think because again, obviously we live in a part of the world where there is community spirit in a lot of the towns and cities in New Brunswick, but certainly in England, there's a lot of towns where there used to be that community spirit, and it doesn't exist anymore. And neighbours, do not look out for each other. They aren't there for each other. What can other towns and cities, places where that community spirit has been lost, what can they learn from 12 Neighbours?
I have no idea. I think every city has a lot of different challenges. Fredericton, being a smaller place, is going to be easier than maybe St. Stephen, but harder than Ottawa or harder than Toronto or Montreal. Those bigger places. I grew up in the projects in Ottawa, and I was talking to Marcel tonight, and there was like hundreds of people in that project that I grew up in. And every single person in there knew everybody in there. Everyone knew every family, and we all got along. No one destroyed their homes. It wasn't quite the same as now, but that, for me, if I could bring that back, because I did move out. My mom and dad moved us out. but that was my home, and I had to keep going back, and that's what I did my whole life. And for me, that was great. Like that was a community, and people wouldn't think that. You know, that you look at those projects in Ottawa, they do look like something from straight out of Compton, but they're close people, and we didn't have security there or cameras everywhere. It was just, we just kind of did our own thing, and in communities, it's always going to be the outside, like our community. Problems that are going to happen there are going to be more from the outside than what we have in our community right now. We're trying to help people that are homeless. I believe everybody in Canada needs a home and deserves a home. And it's up to them what they do with that. You know, we can offer it, but they have to, there's challenges, and it's hard for everyone. It's whether you're growing up and you move away and change schools, you know, your friends that you just had, or you have to meet new ones. It's the same thing. I kind of look at homelessness like people that are institutionalized, that go to prison, they get out, they go back. It's because that's what they're used to. Homeless people do the same thing. They can come to a community and still live homeless because that's what they know. And you can't, it's kind of hard to say no to that to them, you know, but we want to give everyone the opportunity.
Beautiful. I mean, that's the thing that you know, from a very base level, to your point, the chicken and egg has always been that if someone, you know, people say to homeless people, get a job, and meanwhile you can't get a job if you don't have an address, and you can't get an address if you don't have a job. And what you did was remove that chicken and egg situation and gave people the address and a home, and indeed, you know, by default, a community. Why, given what we know, given the research that's been done, given the research that you did, and governments all over the world have access to that same information, why is this model not being, if not replicated, at least an attempt to try and recreate it in different parts of the world, given the amount of money that is kind of funneled into things that don't really do anything? When this, I mean, there has never been a better proof in the pudding of what can be achieved. And yet we're seeing, you know, far larger, greater sums of money being blown on initiatives that don't work. And again, I'm not expecting to have the answers, you know, as to why every government, but it's almost perplexing to anyone to see the success of what you did, why it's not being done elsewhere.
Well, one of the things, actually, let me start with, I think one of the challenges we have in our thinking in most of the developed world, the Western world, I know we don't use the developed world as much anymore, around how to help with whether it's poverty, marginalization, crime, drug problems, all these things. And it comes down to these two words, relief and development. And what happens is, so relief, emergency relief, is, you know, I'm displaced from my home because of war. It's an emergency. You need relief. Relief is appropriate in an emergency. There's flooding. People are in need of rescue. It's fine to rescue people. But there's a little story I tell of, you know, let's say you're walking down the street and you see someone drowning and you're like, oh, you know, it's an emergency. So what are you going to do? Well, I'll help them out of the water. And they're like, oh, thank you for helping me out of the water. I was going to drown. That's emergency relief. You come back the next day. Oh, look, they're in the water again. How could that be? I guess another emergency. I'll rescue them again. You rescue them again. Then you come back the next day. There's two people drowning in the water. And you're like, oh, how could this be? You know, look, it's the same person. He's drowning again. And you save them both, and then he says, you know, this is my friend Jane, and I was telling Jane how great you were, that you've been by the last 2 days and helped me out of here, and she needs help too, so she came with me today. And then all of a sudden you start realizing, wait a minute, I interpreted this emergency situation, but actually it's a chronic situation, and I'm applying emergency relief to a chronic situation, and I'm actually making matters worse because I am normalizing the drowning and the saving every day. And so that's relief. And the problem is we're kind of addicted to relief. Development is where you say, well, why are you, first of all, in there? And understand the root causes and how can I help you develop the skills to not get in there in the first place or to get out. That's development work. It's 1,000 times harder. And this is something I learned just recently in my life, but it hit me so hard once I started seeing it. And I remember I used to work for the company that has the largest building in San Francisco, Salesforce Tower. And, very wealthy company. And San Francisco, you really see the disparity. And I remember at my lunch hour, I'd go hand out some sandwiches, buy some sandwiches, and just homeless people everywhere in San Francisco. And I remember meeting this fella, Del Seymour. They call him the mayor of the Tenderloin. Again, unelected, self-proclaimed mayor of the Tenderloin district, which is the district with the highest homeless population in the city. And he said to me, first of all, don't bring no food down here. You got enough food. You're causing an obesity problem in the Tenderloin. He says, what we don't have is hope and dignity. And if you want to help, this guy here, he's going to die in that homeless shelter. And there's 180 charities here bringing food. He doesn't have a problem with food. The problem he has is he lives on $700 a month, lives in a shelter, and he knows he's going to die in that shelter. He has no hope that anything's going to change. So if you want to help, you got to help think of how you can give someone hope, which means that their situation could change. Then you're like, well, I can't do that on my lunch hour, And so long story short is development. Now, you asked me, why aren't governments doing this? Governments are also addicted to relief because relief is quick. And the public says, got to do something. We thought there was 250 homeless people in Moncton, and there turns out there's 500. What are you going to do? So you go down there and you bring a team, and you commandeer a building, and you open a shelter. All that does is guarantees that you'll have a bigger shelter next year, and a bigger shelter the year after, because it's relief. But relief is easy. It's easy to give a sandwich. It's hard to build a relationship. And so that's what makes it hard. But it's easy to understand. It's just hard to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was it, do you think, that was the the point at which that you realized that this was going to work, but also was working? Because I'm assuming that between doing the research, having this amazing idea, if there's one thing I know about the Maritimes, it's that when someone has a really good idea, there'll be 1,000 people telling them it will never work. and so it's quite difficult fighting through that rhetoric. It's quite difficult fighting through, and again, I think it's born often out of a humbleness and a modesty, and just often people, maybe wanting the best and saying, that's not gonna. I don't fully know where it stems from, but it's definitely something. Even when you tell people that you're about to move here, everyone tries to talk you out of it, oddly, and it's very interesting. So when you're confronted with that, and you are essentially doing something which hasn't really been done in this form anywhere in the world, there's been variations of it, but in the way in which that you were doing it, it was the first of its kind. You're confronted with people telling you that it's not going to be possible. There must have been some nerves there. And what did that feel like? And then what did it feel like when you realized that, oh my goodness, this is actually going to not just happen, but also be a force for good and a force for extremely positive change?
I think that's more of a human condition, it's not going to work. As an entrepreneur, I remember the very first, I was 27 when I became CEO of my first software company, and my very first financial pitch to an investor in Boston, he said, this is never going to work, and you need to just stop wasting everybody's time and money and shut this thing down. And so I've been used to hearing that for a long time. And, I think you have to be comfortable, first of all, realizing at the same time that you're tenacious about doing something, you're also humble in realizing you don't have all the answers. And you're not going to build something perfect. So you could say, well, here's the problem with what you're doing. And you know what? You're right. That's a problem with what we're doing. We could be doing it better. which means we could be doing nothing, to try to wait till you get everything perfect. So one of the things I've learned a lot through business, it's funny, I used to be very strategically minded. Let's develop the perfect strategy. And what happens is those who, I remember my software company that I had in 2011 got acquired by Salesforce. And I remember going to the first meeting, the first executive meeting of Mark Benioff, he's the founder and CEO, and built the company that grew the fastest to $1 billion in revenue of any enterprise software company, faster than Microsoft, Oracle. And so I go to this meeting, and this is like Forbes magazine, 6 year in a row, most innovative software company. And I get to the meeting, and they're going over the deals for the quarter. Okay, is this going to close? Is that going to close? Is that going to close? And then I said to the CEO, I thought I was coming to a strategy meeting. It felt like a sales management meeting. And he said, tactics dictate strategy. And I said, no, strategy dictates your tactics. And he said, if we don't execute in the tactics, we don't earn the right to have a strategy. But if we execute in the tactics, then you get all kinds of room to have strategy. And as I've gotten older, the value of doing something imperfect, as it might be, has gone up, and the value of getting it all right and being perfect has gone down. And so for me, did I have convinced that I had the perfect master plan? And yes, there are a lot of critical voices. There are still many critical voices who come at us with, these homes will all be destroyed, and you shouldn't have put this many people in one place, and all kinds of critics. But to do something perfect, you'd never get started. And so for me, it's like action first, but humbly, and listen and learn as you go. Yeah.
Beautiful. So to that point, as it has evolved and grown, was there a tipping point? Even though, as you say, nothing's ever perfect, there must have been. And I know, it's not your style to be, to pat yourself on the back. But was there a feeling collectively, as you and your team realized that this was not just working, but really becoming something quite special? And what was that moment, and what did that feel like?
I mean, I think I remember the day that our very first couple went into house one. And I wasn't there watching every one of the 97 people move in, but I was there on that one. Mm-hmm. And that was, I met them. They were living in a tent in the woods behind a lumber mill. And I remember going out there to tell them they were going to be the first ones and watching that. And I knew two things. It was going to be really hard, and lots of things were going to go wrong, but lots of things were going to go right. I just had that sense from the beginning. And that's kind of where we're at today. Lots of challenges happened even with that first couple. But now the lady in that house has gone to do some culinary training, and she's now an apprentice baker in our cafe. And to watch her come, yeah. And I saw her today, coming out of in front of house and then back into the kitchen with her white uniform on and the whole thing. And sometimes the road, and someone goes backwards. We've had people pass away in our community. We've had people get really sick. We've had things go, not well, but things go well. So, one of the things I remember learning from Father G, is he said, when I was a young pastor, he said, I used to think, I need to go figure out the secret formula to how to get these guys out of gang life. And he said, now I know, he said, it takes what it takes. In other words, there is no formula. He said, we're just here when they're ready, and we offer opportunities, and they make it work. And so we're not so arrogant as to think that when you say, does it work? We're just creating a context. That's all we're doing. And so, Al's working full time because he wants to, and he's making the choices, and he's overcome lots of stuff. Like, he won't take his shoe off today because he may have broken his toe. But who said to him before we got on here, said, break a leg? And Al's like, I've done that. Al said, I've done that a couple times already. But Al spent like 9 months in a boot in the community, but he's overcome that, and he's on his feet all day. Well, I didn't do that. It's his choice, but we just create these opportunities. So that's all we're doing. We're creating a context. It's not perfect, but people have amazing strengths. If you've been living outside, you have amazing strengths. And now if you can at least get a little bit of support instead of a tailwind or headwind, you get a little bit of a tailwind, see what they make of it.
Beautiful. Yeah, so true. So true. It's a very interesting point you make that why don't more employers see the fact that rather than looking at people that have a housing situation as being something lesser, why don't they see them actually as, my goodness, if this person can survive this, then imagine the amazing things that they could do given an opportunity. And maybe that's a dialogue switch that again can stem from this. I mean, for you, Al, can you tell me a bit about some of your neighbours, some of the friends that you've made there, and the people that are around you that impress you, and just bring warmth into your heart every day?
Well, I'm in the original 6 houses, so we're all very close in that 6, really close. We hang out. Well, we all know a lot of people in the community, and they come and they hang out. So I do my thing in the daytime for 12 neighbors, and when I'm done, I go home and I'm entertaining there as well, because my porch is surrounded by chairs and people every night, and they're great people, and I have a lot of friends there, and Shanda does, and that's important. And Mark, I have a friend there, and he'll yell to everybody that I'm his best friend. You might think that I might not be the mayor. I don't know if I'm his best friend, but he yells it out, so that must mean it's so. So I am the mayor.
Al, it sounds like you need to set the date for the wedding, or that guest list is going to be out of control.
It's not really me. I've already set a few dates. It's Shanda that's shying away from it because she's nervous now that when we first said that, we had 6 houses. Now we have 97 in a big cafe, and it's a lot of people. And she's getting more nervous.
When the media comes, Al jumps out into the street, Shanda closes the door. So they're very different.
That's right. Yeah, so she's nervous of that. She's afraid that all the news media and all the people that we've met, like even through 12 neighbors, are going to show up. And Shanda thinks they're going to storm the place or something. And I'm like, I will let everybody. I did a speech in St. John with Marcel, and I almost invited everybody at that place to come. And Shanda would have killed me. I was like,
are you all available for the wedding?
Well, we'll do it here. Talk about, though, there's a lot of people in the community that because I know you talk about how proud you are of certain individuals, and you're even in the car on the way up here, you're talking about how well this person's doing and that's doing. So what are some of those, without names,
Yeah, so my so-called best friend in there, he did a little speech with Marcel yesterday, and another community member went, and he's proud of it. And I'm proud of him for going because he's never done it. And it builds confidence. And he's right up here right now. And that's good. And that's where I wanted him to be. And that's where I want everybody in our community to be. We're all good in there, and we all have good times in there. And we do community things together as well. We have a community barbecue. We usually have concerts and singing. And that's for our community. We're not really inviting all the public. That's us getting together because we do have new members. And we want everybody to meet everybody. And, you'll find your friends. They're there. Friends are never hard to find. There's always going to be friends, and there's always going to be people that will come and go in your life. and you accept it. But the ones that come new, you have to accept them. And it's a good place to be. I love it there so much. You know, Marcel and I talk to different people, and they'll say they have Al now because they might want me to go to their community about it. I'm just going for the price right now. And who really thinks I'll be a mayor in their community?
I think that's one of the beautiful things that I think we're all learning tonight is that prior to this, certainly, to my mind, I'd been so kind of amazed and impressed by it, but never really considered how much fun and how much people actually love living there. Like it seemed like, oh, this is a necessity. Take people away from homeless situation, put them in a house, and it becomes a necessity. But the reality is you've created something which is this community, which we all. And again, we're very lucky in New Brunswick to have a community spirit here, but that is not the case all over the world. And I use England as an example where that's been lost from so many towns and cities. That's a really magical thing. Like, what was it, do you think, Marcel, about your upbringing that made you want to do this in the first place? And indeed, was there something from your childhood that led you to have this outlook where doing good and bringing about community and bringing communities together for a force for good was something that became such a priority for you in life?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was from my childhood. Maybe a few things. You know, I grew up. My parents were grade 6 and 7 educated, and we grew up on a single salary home, so everything was always very tight. My dad worked for the same company from 14 years old till he retired as a bike messenger when he was 14, and then eventually he made eyeglasses, actually, his whole career. But I remember, in spite of not having a lot, I remember when I was going to UMB, leaving high school, going to UMB, I think tuition at the time was $1,600 for the year. And I had I think I was working like almost full-time hours on top of school at Dairy Queen at $3.80 an hour, and to save up enough for tuition. And then I was going to be I became a residence proctor to get a free room, this whole make it all work. But on the weekend when I went for my first year, I didn't quite have everything together. And my dad slipped me an envelope with $1,600 in it, and I was like, "Dad, that's a lot, And he said, "It's only money." Yeah, and that was, and he had said that. I've heard him say that before, and so I think that in spite of not having a lot, it was just he did definitely have a value system that, obviously the relationship was more than money. But for me, in university, also lots of things changed in my life, and I became a person of faith in university as an adult, just wrestling with things. I mean, I kind of grew up a little bit culturally with some things, but not really anything too serious. And then really I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I like building things. I like building go-karts when I was a kid. I like building, somebody say yes? Oh, yeah. Nice, yeah. We built little go-karts out of wood. You put the axle and you'd mount the axle with bent nails, and this kind of thing. Anyone remember that? Drive it with your feet. Anyway, and I became an engineer because I like building things, but then I accidentally became an entrepreneur, discovered I like building companies, and that I didn't know. I kind of fell into that. And I, was able to have some success with it. And then I remember, I've done it a few times, but the last company we sold, we built a pretty successful company. And, I kind of left. When I left there, I was like, okay, what do I do now? And always had a sense that, it's about, you can't just you can sit on the beach and enjoy yourself for a week, but that's not what we're meant to enjoy as humans. We're meant to give of ourselves. And I remember reading there's a passage in Isaiah which is really interesting. It's this little conversation going on between God and people, and they're like, "Hey God, why aren't you listening? You know, we're doing all these things. We're praying, we're fasting, we're doing all these things." And God kind of comes back and he says, "Well, you're kind of not quite getting it. You're doing all these things, but this isn't the kind of religiosity I'm looking for. It's this. I want you to share your food with the hungry. I want you to satisfy the needs of the oppressed." And in this beautiful verse in 58, it says, and if you spend yourself, and it was really interesting because I had some money to spend, but I came across this: if you spend yourself on behalf of the oppressed and satisfy the needs of the hungry, then your light will shine in dark places. Your light will dispel darkness, and your own darkness will turn into noonday. So it's a beautiful kind of two-way promise. And it began kickstarting me into, what does it mean to spend yourself? And really, that's how you impact others. That's how, it's with ourselves. And so for me, I started kind of that learning journey, and now I'm not in the tech world. I'm not on airplanes every day, and I feel like I'm, doing the best work of my life. And, you talk about community. It's a super rich community. Like my life's been enriching significantly, meeting, like I could write several books of
Please do.
characters that I've met, we've got the most dynamic, interesting people that just keep you laughing. It's hilarious, crying sometimes, but yeah. So it's been really enjoyable for me as well. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I find that moment so fascinating, where you've sold your company, as you say. You can, and there are people, of course, that find themselves in similar positions where they realize that they don't just want to. They have a moment like that, a huge success. They don't just want to sit on a beach, but in a lot of cases, people's answer is to sit and essentially write checks. And anyone can do that. They can do that from their mansion. They can do that from their beach. But for you, that realization that spending yourself was going to be a far more enriching and beneficial. What would your message be to other people in that position who possibly think that they can't do that, and that it's just easier to kind of to write a check? What would you say to them about getting out there and actually kind of, for want of a better phrase, putting your mouth where your money is, as opposed to flip it?
I mean, I think I kind of have two things I tend to talk about when everyone has this question. I want to help, but how? And so maybe they're walking down the sidewalk and like they see somebody with a cup and they're like, I am torn, I don't know what to do. Should I, shouldn't I? Am I helping, am I enabling, that kind of stuff. Al might have opinion about what you do there. But, I think two things. One is, I think we have an opportunity and a responsibility to try to be smart with how we give. And so what I've learned is to really look for initiatives that invest in development, not emergency relief. Emergency relief, it's so easy because it's so immediate and you feel it and you're like, look, this person was hungry and now they're not, and I just did this thing. But you can do that forever. But if you can figure out how to invest in development, that's one thing. And then the second thing is, getting involved in things. All of a sudden you learn so much. You have a perspective, even if you don't have much time. There's lots of different ways. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes charities, interestingly, struggle with, people want to volunteer and then ends up, like we had people who wanted to volunteer, help build houses. And my head of construction was like, it causes us more work than it helps. Right? Yeah. Because they're coming in with the weekend carpenter and our guys are flying by and now they have to slow down and get this person engaged. And so you have to not expect charities to just go, like I remember companies would show up and they'd say, what do we get them to do? Well, we'll get them to stack these shelves and all that. And you actually think you're helping, but you're not. And so it's like, take your time, go slow, build relationships. Just put yourself in the middle of mess and watch what happens. Like, just become present where there are problems, you know, and all of a sudden you'll not run out of opportunities to do things. And I'm way deep in it now, and so it's like
No turning back.
Yeah. Amazing. And I guess to answer that, the question and the dilemma that Marcel posed, where what is the best way for people to help someone in the moment when they don't just want to walk by, but they don't, you know, is it to buy them a meal? Is it to, and what is the most dignified way to treat someone? And I guess what can people do on a kind of a very base level?
Yeah, that is. I don't know.
No, that's fair enough. No, and it's yeah, I didn't mean to be on the spot.
I think you know, Al.
I don't know. For me, I don't think a sandwich is the answer. I think my hugs are great. And I think that makes people come to our cafe and they want hugs.
Yeah.
And I give them. And I like giving them. And they like getting them. And they're happy. So they didn't come and ask for a sandwich. They just asked for a hug. And that's easy. Sandwich, you got to make it. I don't want to go through all that. I don't work in a cafe.
Well, that's all.
I don't even make those at home.
We're gonna hug a stranger tomorrow. Can we all agree that? Or tonight, we can. At the end of tonight, we're all gonna get up. We're gonna hug each other because no more COVID. So
No.
we can enjoy hugs.
We've had lineups at our cafe, and I kind of sense that somebody might leave because there's a lineup, and I'll go out and offer hugs if they stay, and I get a lot of hugs, and they stay, and I don't want people to leave like not experiencing that cafe, because it is great. Like, people love it. I want all of you to come too. Everybody show up. You'll get hugs.
And for the wedding.
You don't need a reservation. I was just playing. I was doing that to the regulars, actually, so I wouldn't do that to any newcomers there.
But I think
Marcel is like very good too. Like in our community, you see Marcel works there. Like, can put the work boots on and get in a loader on the tractor. He does. Like, Marcel works there. He builds fences. He's always there. So he's not just some guy that's like, here, build this and I'll see you later, and goes like to Hawaii. He's like I've seen him, like, you know, I'm making my coffee in the morning. He's out there like hammering a fence, and I'm like, come on.
Beautiful.
How am I going to keep up with this guy?
right now I'm growing weeds. Trying
We
to grow
do have
grass.
some weeds,
Yeah.
but
Al,
that's
I
for the
think-
ducks.
I think what Al said is really interesting, though, is, you know, about do they need a sandwich or a hug. You know, when you're walking on the sidewalk, it's not really the context to give someone a hug. But here's the probably more often than not, or quite often, you know, people are doing what they call hustling, and they're working their thing, and is it helping? That's a question to always ask. Is it helping? And what happens is what I call a poverty of circumstance, you know, based on your current present circumstances, if experienced long enough, becomes a poverty of identity, where you identify as less than. And the way out is not a transformation of circumstances, because you might change someone's circumstances, but if the identity narrative is still what it was, you go right back into those circumstances. But transforming the identity narrative is if somebody starts to realize they are not who they're said to be, or they're not even who they say they are or say they were, then they don't go back. They might revisit them from time to time, but they know that's not who I am. And so that's the hard work and so how do you do that? It's like kindness. It's like when somebody comes to me in the community and says, I have this problem, and they're used to going to other people to solve it, I try to never solve it. I try to believe in them. I try to say, well, look, you've been through, first of all, this little saying I like is, you've made it through every day so far. You'll probably make it through today too. And this is a crisis you've got, but I'm not going to, I'll say to myself, rob them of the opportunity to find it in themselves to overcome this issue and accomplish it themselves. But what they might need is someone to just can believe that they have what it takes to do it. And so it's like, how do you invest in believing in someone? Well, to do that, you have to build relationships. So the reality is that person on the sidewalk when you're walking by, I would say, go out on a limb and say, there's not much you can really do to help them because it's not really the context, but maybe there's another context where, because what they really need is a friend who believes in them. And you're not going to be that just there on the sidewalk, unless they're on the sidewalk next to your front door every day, then that could be a different story. Yeah.
But I mean, as you say, like a gift is dignity, eye contact, respect.
Yeah.
A handshake could be a hug. There's
And a sandwich can be kind. Like I'm not saying don't ever do it. I'm just saying that's not the answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
I understand. And I mean, I know it's one of the most, it must be one of the most frustrating questions when you've already done so much, and none of us like that question, like, what's next? But I'm assuming that there's a game plan for a year, 2 years, 5 years. Not to say that you need to do more. You've done plenty. You could stop now, and it would still be. No. But I'm assuming that there is, plans. Are you able to share some of those with us? And I guess also leading into that, even though none of us want to be the annoying carpenter holding everyone up, what are the ways that we can all in this room help and in any way, shape or form with those plans?
So 2 years ago, I bought a fishing kayak. And I put it in the water last weekend for the first time. So I want to do a little bit of that this summer,
Nice.
Which will be nice. For us, I feel like the construction side is, we're through 2 years of building the physical part of the vision. But now the operational, working out all of the kinks and the processes and ultimately making it financially sustainable. I started in the software business, and then I'm becoming a worse and worse entrepreneur because now I'm starting all the businesses that everyone tells you not to. A cafe, screen printing, building houses. Like they're hard. But it's operationalizing that, and right now the vision's really just starting, honestly, because, like Al said, we have about 10 community members that have been working in the cafe. I'd love to create, and what's really interesting is, you'd mentioned the get a job earlier thing. One thing that I've learned a lot that was not in my head when I started this is the degree to which the significance of employment barriers that people have, especially if they've been living outside. Physical pain, health issues, mental health, anxiety, relational, challenges, just getting along with coworkers or bosses or that kind of thing. There's a lot, and then that doesn't even touch on the skill, whatever the task might be, carpentry or whatever else it might be. And I've learned a lot from that, but the power, like hope, my two big words, hope and purpose. Hope is, the future could be different tomorrow than it is today. Purpose is like I matter, something about me matters to somebody. That's a powerful thing. If you don't have that, it's hard to get up, And so I've seen people come into the community, get housed, and sure, they had maybe more purpose when they were homeless, because when they were homeless, they fought for their survival every day. Then they get housed and they're sitting there with their own thoughts and having to deal with whatever's going on in here and sitting around. And so you have to give, you have to channel and help people have these outlets. But I've seen it where, I've had community members where we're able to here's a job, and they're like, get a certain path, and then it lasts 2 days, and you're like, what happened? And just the degree to which that process needs to be gradual and supportive till they get to a point where, okay, and I've seen that with young adults. Young adults, you put them in a 2-3 week training program, classroom, and then you do a 8 or 10 week internship, and they don't make it halfway through. Well, what happened? Well, this guy kept telling me what to do. You mean your boss? Yeah. Well, that's his job, to tell you what to do. I told him to go, whatever. Oh, and then you don't get another shot. You're fired right away. In our space, you get lots of other shots. And so you need that kind of thing. So for me, what's next is I'd love to, one of the things that we're fundraising for right now is we call it our development fund. Again, back to the word development. And so we're inviting people to just give $10 a month or $20 a month. And what we do with the development fund is I put more people to work. So like I'd love to have 6 people cleaning the floors in the cafe, but the cafe can't fund 6 people cleaning the floors. But if I could do that, then I'm giving people that sense of purpose and the sense of community and support and growth. And then they don't go back to homelessness, and then they get on their feet and they move on, and then someone else comes in their place. And we've already had.
And no one's pushed into working there like 8 hours a day, come in and work 1 a day or 1 a week. Just that'll get you going, and it'll make you want to go back. And I think for a lot of them, seeing a paycheck, they've never seen that. They don't even know what to do with that. They don't have bank accounts. A lot of people don't have ID when they show up. A lot of people don't have cell phones. They're not keeping up with what's going on at 12 Neighbours. I always say to Marcel, we need to reach out to the people that are homeless, and they're not hearing us because they don't have this, and they're not into the media and all that stuff. But we didn't give up. Nobody gives up on homelessness. I'm sure everybody here wishes it wasn't there, and it is. But I don't want anybody thinking we gave up on them when they're out there, because we haven't. And I'll always fight for people I just think they at least need the chance to have a home. And for jobs in our community and employment, it doesn't have to be full-time, and it doesn't have to be, you have to do this now. You take your time and just gradually build up.
The other quick thing I would say is if you wanted to do something like this in Woodstock, St. John, Moncton, wherever, I feel like it's very doable. I feel like, so the government programs now for housing are way more generous than we were. They call us pre-crisis. We weren't pre-crisis, but we were pre it being declared a crisis. But you still need a community leader, because governments don't lead because it generally is risky, and I'm sure there's lots of people that work in government here, and everyone I've met in government is a fantastic individual, but they're in a system and a culture, and it's better not to get in trouble for doing something that everyone's upset about. So what happens is it's easier for government to come in behind me because they can blame me for doing it this way or this. So all the critics can be pointed at me instead of them. Oh yeah, I know we did it that way, So you need a community leader who's gonna drive it forward. And I think government will come behind, and I think private dollars will too. I think you can fundraise, and because you do need some private capital to match and bring along the public money and all that. But I think that community lead, and a lot of people ask me, okay, am I going to do it in different cities? And I think you need a community leader who lives here, who's on the ground, who understands, no, not here, yes, here, not like that, yes, like that. So we always say we're happy to share everything. We'll share our financial models, our house plans, we'll share everything. But we're sticking to where we live, and we're happy to help someone else, encourage someone else who in that community.
Amazing.
Al wants us to franchise and go across the country, but we're not doing that.
This is what I'm thinking, and I think that there's one thing we can all do in addition to signing up for the donating every month and supporting that and making sure that more people can be hired. that's something that we could all do. But also something we could all do is, make that known that this information that there was 300 organizations that you studied, and you had, dozens and dozens of students and research experts that came up with this model. Of course, now, you have the actual experience of it as well. The fact that you are happy to share that information with someone else that is willing to get out there and do this, let's let it be known in our communities and through the pages of a magazine and anywhere we can, that if someone is willing to stand up and be counted, all of that information is there for the taking, and they don't need to go through all of the stresses and nightmares I'm sure you had on the journey to get there. Beautiful.
But no matter what, there will be stresses and nightmares.
Yes, I'm sure.
I mean, anything worthwhile is difficult.
Of course.
When I coach young entrepreneurs, my number one advice is expect trouble. And secondly, when you encounter trouble, don't say, oh, what went wrong? It's like that's where you create value, when you overcome trouble. So everything's going to be hard.
Yeah.
There's no easy way. Yeah.
Sure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for the amazing questions. Thank you for your support. I should point out that if anyone does want to learn more or indeed support any way that you can, the website is 12neighbours.com. And please join me in thanking Marcel and Al for being here with us tonight.
And if anybody thought you were coming to anyone who thought you were coming to a comedy show or a concert, we're sorry.
But if anyone was expecting a comedy show, I'm in room 301, and that is actually the room I'm in. But this is New Brunswick, and we're a community, so just give me a knock.
Comedy show in 301.
Mullinger's Weekly Ramble.
You've been listening to a Podstarter production.